connecting. Okay, and now we are live. Welcome everybody. Welcome Kieran, our speaker about the field of human-to-human interaction. So, Kieran, the first question for you actually, can you tell us a bit more about your work about this OHUB Futures?
Absolutely. Well, I'll begin by thanking you so much, Sasha, for an unlimited realities for the invitation to share my thoughts and perspective on how important this human-to-human work is in the tech ecosystem. And so, as you mentioned, I'm co-founder and chief growth officer for OHUB, which is a skills, jobs, and placement platform that's really committed to solving one of the United States and even our global world's, I think, longest standing issues, and that is, in fact, the undereducation, underrepresentation, and often underemployment of Black and historically underserved communities across the globe. And so, ranging from college students to working professionals to adult learners, we deliver a leading curriculum and exposure to exponential tools, techniques, and frameworks to prepare our participants, our students, and our ecosystem members for upwardly mobile careers in the technology space with our global network of hiring partners. And so our mission is to skill, reskill, and upskill 1 million Black and brown people by 2025 to really enable them to fully participate in this lucrative digital revolution. And so I think that at the core of our work, it's really centered around disrupting and reimagining the education and workforce training infrastructures to help these communities to future-proof and accelerate their pathways into highly sought and well-compensated career opportunities in the tech space. And so to your second question, just a little more about OHUB. OHUB is a technology startup and venture ecosystem building platform. Again, that's been created to ensure that everyone everywhere does have this access. And so our innovative organization with leaders from education, cultural influencers, entrepreneurial leaders are really committed to doing just what I mentioned earlier, and that's increasing racial equity in this fourth industrial revolution. And we have a nonprofit foundation and an investment fund as well that's also dedicated to advancing the next generation of Black and brown entrepreneurs and investors. We have built a rather incredible and sizable ecosystem, and that's continuing to grow pretty aggressively. About 30,000 professionals, entrepreneurs, and investors, including 7,000 college students and 400 colleges and representing 400 colleges and universities that are united by the shared belief that our future is better and more equal if we accelerate racial, social, and economic equity. And so, as I shared, this work is deeply passionate to me, obviously being a part of this community and also being a recipient of a lot of the benefits of taking my career into the tech space. And so, that's socially, economically, I've reaped and continue to reap the significant benefits of being a participant in this world. And so, the more that I can shepherd people into this space and get others to understand, I think, the importance of having diversity of thought at the table, the more pleased I am. I think the more that I am making my contribution to the world.
Wow, really, it's really impressive, and I think you really do a very important thing for Black and brown community. Really, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Do you think that this community nowadays have the same problems as people had like 50 years ago? Do you think the life has changed or not?
Unfortunately, I don't. I think that we're still up against some of the same challenges. I mean, if you really take a look at some of the milestones of Black progress, and I'm going to speak within the scope of the United States specifically, where I'm a citizen. As of the 60s, as of the late 60s, like civil rights movements were still taking place, up and even to today, where we're dealing with significant injustices with the relationship between Black and brown communities and the justice system. And so there's those external factors around us that are impacting the social infrastructure. I think even more it influences the way that we are perceived in public spaces. When you look at the influence of media publications, when you turn on the news and you see Black persons being personified as criminals, as persons that are less than, as second class citizens, that trickles into how we're perceived in work environments. That trickles into how we're perceived when we walk into spaces where we're not represented in large numbers. And so, to take it to frame it a bit more as it relates to technology, I mean, there's a ton of research out there. For example, one group I follow pretty closely is the Caper Center, and they uncovered some really disheartening and startling insights about the existence still of bias in hiring, where names that sound ethnic, for example, are more likely to not get moved forward in the application process.
Yeah.
There's still pay inequities rather, that are existing in this tech space. They said on average, Black tech workers are offered salaries $10,000 less than the white tech workers for the exact same roles. And so when you ask the question, like, do I still feel like these issues exist? I think they do still exist. And I think it's because the character and the perception of Black and brown people is continuing to be soured, if you will, at a large scale. And so it's influencing the way that we engage with our non-Black and brown brethren. And so, for myself, obviously, a perfect world would be one where we as people can show up as our most authentic selves without having these kind of concerns, without feeling as though we need to somehow, leave pieces of our authentic selves at home when we're in these environments, so that we don't get put in the wrong bucket, so that we don't trigger people to put us in these stereotypical folds that we can all fall victim to. And I mean, I think it holds true for other groups. Like, let's say, like, for example, like, if you were someone, maybe with like like those spike collar chains or long earrings, like someone may associate you with someone a little gothic or something. We in the same way deal with some of those same adversities, some of those same um, misperceptions. I think I'll close with that.
You have just mentioned very important thing. It's very important because it's also personally, because I have had experienced something like that. That people with ethnical names, for example, during the application, probably they will be denied the application. So, do you know that there was, or maybe it still exists, I don't remember correctly right now, it was a project about artificial intelligence.
Yes, coded
Sorry,
bias.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we're actually, so next week, Thursday, May 13th, my organization, we're actually hosting our New Jobs Forum 2.0, which is focused on resolving bias, backwardness, and essentially some of these discriminatory practices that we're discussing now. And one of our special guests is actually the film producer and director of Coded Bias, who will be taking a deep dive into how we can in fact confront the bias in AI. And that's kind of what I touched on too, in my keynote, if you recall, is just the importance of making sure that there are more voices at the table. If
Mm-hmm.
these tools, technologies are being built in vacuums, and these vacuums are being orchestrated and being by persons who are from one homogenous group, then you can certainly expect that there will be people's needs, concerns, and preferences that are left out of consideration. And so, it's simply put, I use the an analogy of thinking about it as like a dinner party of sorts. Like if you were to invite me to dinner, a good hospitable guest would, make sure that I actually eat the things that are going to be served. Like, do you eat meat?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like mashed potatoes? Do you like green beans? What are your preferences? I think that if we can think with that mind, if we could think with that level of empathy, hospitality in mind as we make these tools and as we continue to accelerate in this space. I do think that we will be able to reach a bit of an equilibrium. That we
Mhm.
can find that space of I'm gonna make this word of equalization, democratization, across the tech space. I think that we so desperately need, and I think what would be more impressive, I think, and I challenge, our generation, I challenge this community to is doing this because no other time in human history have people been able to touch one another at the scale that we can today through technology. Balance. For example, I mean, you're in Germany and I'm in St. Louis, Missouri right now, and we are having a full conversation. This is what technology can do right now. Interconnect us, keep us engaged. We can share perspectives, and we can use what we have at our fingertips right now to change the status quo, to disrupt these old systematic ways of thinking. We can lift up from the roots, these systemic issues that have held us back for far too long. And yeah, obviously I can go on. I mean, this is just a space. I think as a bit of my background, I study UX design, senior UX research and design, and so those principles of empathy come top of mind. I just wish that if there's one thing I can just leave this audience with is to make sure that you do know your audience, understand the people that we're looking to serve. Keep in mind those, like, don't leave anyone out. That was kind of what drove
Mhm.
the title of it, like left out of the new world. There's so many striking implications for what that can mean if people are not considered as we continue advancing in this space, everywhere from workplace disparities, medical disparities, spikes in unemployment. I mean, you name it, we could be confronted with and we have a chance to prevent this. And so why not?
That's great. So, in terms of interaction, like human to human interaction, um, do you believe that Black and Brown community faces nowadays a lot of problem if we speak about application for job, admission for maybe university? Do you believe that there are still a big problem between different, let's say, skin colors? Sorry.
Between people of different skin colors, I'm going to say yes. I think it's a matter of just understanding one another. Truthfully, I think it's making sure that when you want that, I hate to use this old adage of, like, not judging a book by its cover, but I think it's very
Right.
true. Like, make some. I think that if you can understand, like you said, like human to human. The everything that makes us different is what makes us rich when we show up to environments. Like, the way that we think, our lived experiences, the things that we've had, the things we haven't had. All those things shape who we are, and that's what makes, I think, this life experience so incredible and so unique. And it's one of the things that I've always been hungry for. I've spent quite a bit of my earlier career traveling internationally so that I could try and better understand culture, so that I can better understand, where I fit into the broader global construct. And what I found is that we aren't so different. Outside of the physical characteristics. I mean, we are all looking for the same thing. We're looking for contentment. We want safety. We want security. We want love, affection. We're not that different. And so when you think about this human to human interaction, to reduce it to something as to something, in my opinion, is so menial as distinguishing a person or deciding on how you treat a person based on how much melanin they have in their skin, something that they cannot control, something that they didn't ask for any more than you did for the way that you look physically. It's unfair, it's absurd, and I think it can really prevent you from. It can really stand in the way, I think, from you becoming a richer person. Throughout your life, through in your lived experience. I think as much as it is important for us to understand ourselves on a intrapersonal level, I think it's that much more impressive, when we can understand others on an interpersonal level. Like I said, I speak to my abroad experiences. You know, I still have great. I studied and I've had an opportunity to take on some tech projects in Tel Aviv, for example. Still have a lot of great friends from that. I didn't understand the Jewish culture, but I immersed myself in it. I learned it. I was a student of their culture. I did not walk in and try to impose my way of thinking on anyone. I did not. I went in with empathy top of mind because I knew that by the time I left that experience, I want to be able to come back and be not only culturally sensitive, but also take some of their way of thinking and find ways to intertwine it into mine so that I could again could become a richer, more, I call it my intellectual muscle, if you will, so that it could be stronger as I continue to engage people throughout my life experience. And so again, I think that reducing the way the way that you perceive a person, the way that you decide to engage a person, just simply based on the color of their skin. I mean, the fact that we're still even having this conversation, honestly, in this century is troubling. The fact that I just saw a post earlier that the Japanese Olympics, for example, is preventing people from wearing Black Lives Matter shirts.
Mm, yeah.
Startling, and it makes you question, like, what's the source of this? Like, what can we do to uproot this? What do we really need to do to confront this, in a way that will make everyone everywhere feel welcomed, and not isolated and not ostracized. That is what grounds my work, and that's what keeps me bringing these type of conversations to life and provoking them with thought leaders like yourselves and in this unlimited realities community, because that's what it's about. Unlimited realities. We have a chance to make equality and democratization a new reality for all.
Yes, and that's true. And if we speak about humanity and human to human interaction, I feel that there is somewhat, let's say, the lack of respect for another human being. Because it's not about skin color, it's not about the religion, it's not about age, for example, but it's about being human,
Mm.
it's about being kind, for example. And unfortunately, in my opinion, in the world, there is now really some kind of humanitarian problem because we can't respect another human being, and we are so intolerant. I don't know why. Um, in your opinion, this gap, because maybe we can call it like a gap between um, with this lack of respect, can we improve the situation in your opinion in some
I
way?
I do. I do, in fact. I think this can be improved. I mean, there are a number of. I don't think I have the end all be all answer, but I definitely think that this is something um, that can be addressed. One thing that I propose, I think that part of equality is not just saying that I respect you, or offering you a seat at the table, but it's making sure, again, we focus a lot on what we call economic equities. I think that when you think about um, when I think about this with respect to the tech ecosystem, and to what I shared earlier in the keynote, what I proposed was about the importance of bringing the same type of opportunities that you have in your communities. What is the problem with making that invested, and let's rinse and repeat that and put these in communities that are more vulnerable, and who really do need to elevate in order to survive and thrive in this new wave. And you know, I don't want this to feel like, I don't know how it needs to be perceived. If there needs to be like, if this is a like works of charity, I don't know if it's, I don't even, it's like you said, like it's human to human. It boils down to basic respect and on dignifying a person's existence by making sure that like the same way that you know that food and water and shelter
Mhm.
are necessities, you understand that other human beings need that as well. And so, when you think about, your jobs and your roles in this tech, and when you see those sizable returns, just know that there's a person out there that the only thing that they're missing The only thing I'm missing is this exposure and socialization to learn that. There's so many great there's so many historic persons, black and brown that have contributed to what where we've gotten now. With technology, with mathematics, with STEM, that there's no mistake that people of melanated complexion, can do this work and do have impressive things that they can, in fact, contribute. But it's lowering those guardrails, it's lowering those barriers to entry, it's making sure that there are access points in this ecosystem so that they know where to go. It's such a continuing to work in vacuums and and isolated groups of people who again look the same, think the same, act the same. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a disservice um, to innovation and ingenuity at large. It's all about disruption. So if you really want to disrupt, invite in there. Like invite in more brains, more perspectives again to the table, so that you can more effectively and productively, see the kind of changes in the world that we all really deserve to see, truthfully.
Yeah, that's true. And among the black and brown community, um, I don't know if you have this data or not. How many people have the access to education and to work, and even to maybe well-paid job, for example?
There was a recent report from HRNA that I kind of touched on, said that if the workforce, as we know it in the United States, is to reflect the world that we really live in, then we are in fact 1.1 million Black and Latinx people shy of equity. And so that, coupled with some research I came across in the Caper from the Caper Center, it said that despite representing 13% of the U.S. population, Black professionals are only making up 5% of the tech
Oh,
workforce, 3% of tech executive roles, and only 1% of funding is going to Black founders. So this is that obviously compared to the white population, if you will, not to make this a race game, but compared to well, this war game, yeah, let's say this is a game, compared to the white counterparts, who represent, I believe it was 68%, but are showing up at almost at over 70% representation in the tech field. And so you couple that with just like things that have just been built into the historic narrative, where a lot of Black communities, as you may know or may not know, are buried in poverty and debt, and things like the COVID-19 in this pandemic that we're all trying to live through, has doubled that and further widened health disparities, job loss for this community that was already vulnerable and was just finally getting to a place of true economic and social advancement. And then here comes the loom and doom of all things of a global pandemic to slow that down and throw the community off its course. And and so it's if you were to look at this as a maybe it would be people would be more digest if we thought of this like a natural disaster.
yeah.
We think of this like a net, like if this were, let's think of this tech, this fourth industrial revolution is almost like this tornado of sorts. For people who have it, they will be able to shelter and go into some safe spaces to survive. But they'll have the jobs, they'll have the money. They will not have their livelihood in any way disrupted. What for those who don't? They have not in this case, in this game of sorts, in this race, will find themselves swept up, injured, displaced,
Yeah.
thrown around, tossed around. And that's another reason why I decided to give a little bit of historic context with like the first world revolution, and about the introduction of steam, electricity, and what that meant for once skilled laborers and workers, and how they were displaced and how they were at the mercy, in fact, of machines and of a new economy that they never saw forthcoming. When we look at that, if we think about that, we know it's happened before. We know it's possible. We know that it could be a part of this unlimited reality as we know it. And so when you think about that, like, in finance, they do like, scenario analysis to think about how to mitigate different risks. Well, we know that this is a possibility. So what are the strategies? What are the tactics that we can put in place to mitigate this? And a few things I mentioned were, bringing that access to new skills, making sure that entrepreneurial ecosystems where people can build their own thriving communities are established. And let's move that. Let's 10x that investment from going to 1% of Black founders to at least 10%. Let's level the playing field. Let's not leave anybody out. And this is not. I don't want to come up as like it's not like it's not a plea. It's just fairness. It's just fairness. If I have 2 gallons of water and I see that, Sasha, you don't have a cup, I would pour you a glass. That's fairness. That's me taking what I have. That's me making sure that my resources are now equitably distributed in some capacity, to a person who needs it just a little bit more than me. That doesn't mean that I'm now thirsty because I gave you a cup. I still have a gallon or two over here. That just means that now you have a better chance at survival, and that's really the ask.
How we can disrupt, let's say, the modern society? What should be the first step to help Black and Brown community?
Well, the first step I think is really seeing the Black and Brown community as just a part of your broader community. I think that, part of it, I think that when you isolate and you segregate and you think of people as being different, I think that you naturally draw these kind of lines of these kind of barriers. I think it kind of goes back, if you think about like, elementary school, like, it's kind of like where people who like the same toys as you, like those are the people that you're more naturally gravitated to. The real challenge is whenever the teacher assigned groups and you had to figure out how you were going to communicate, engage, and get along with somebody that you wouldn't normally, interact with. I think we're at that same kind of place when we think about what modern society can do for these communities. Like, you've kind of looked at it. It's always been the other. It's always been that thing that you've kind of seen about, kind of heard about, may have had a couple of interactions with, maybe in the workplace, maybe at school, but you never fully immerse yourself in it, or you never invited it in. And so I think that the first part, like we touched on earlier, was just having like a common sense of decent of empathy, respect, and I think extending those invitations to the community, like where that obviously could really benefit significantly from having the same type of resource access as you. And again, it goes it when I almost feel guilty for wanting to just to want to make it as to oversimplify it, but it's really as simple as reaching a hand out. It's really as simple as like if you have the knowledge, you have the resources, and you have the insights, it's really open sourcing this. It's really making it's if there is a community, I'm sure that's near a lot of our persons, that maybe that you can just know just by like optically. It's probably not in the best shape economically. Contribute. Find a way to get in there. Find a way that you can share your richness, that you can bestow some of your blessings on that community. I think that's real. I think that's really where it begins. And I think it's not seeing this as just like a simple act of charity or a check in the box. I think that this kind of work really calls into question your own personal character and your own personal conviction about treating human beings like civilized human beings. We live among ourselves. I mean, we cage and frown at the animal kingdom, and we call ourselves these intellectual beings. We're supposed to be the highest level of species that are walking this planet, and we can't even get along. We can't even sit among each other. We can't even like share. I see you see those cute videos on YouTube where you'll see like a duck sharing food with a squirrel or something. Like I see those things get like millions of likes. Think of ourselves in those spaces. These are two species, two different worlds, separate needs, separate wants, separate pains, separate things that they see as gains, and yet they're able to cooperatively communicate, engage, and share. And I think that that's really where we're at right now. When we talk about taking the first step, I think it's seeing, and just to kind of summarize, it's beginning by empathizing. It's beginning by seeing yourself
Yes.
in that picture. It starts with you. Um, just thinking, imagining yourself being in that situation, and who how would you want a person to respond to you if you were in a situation that you couldn't get out, if you were in a rock and a hard, between a rock and a hard place, if you will. What would that look like for you if someone could throw you a life vest in this matter, a proverbial life vest to save your life. Think of it like that. And I think that people will get very creative sooner than later about what they can do to step in, to resolve this obvious global issue of more civil, human to human engagement and interaction.
Yeah. Do you personally believe that one day all the people will be united? Not in terms of like now being divided by race, by age, by religion, or whatever. Do you believe that finally we all be united, like all human beings of the earth?
I think that if we all believe it, it's possible. I think that in the same way that we all believe that the sky is blue and water is clear, and that you know beer needs to be a part of a good time, if we all can agree and we can all have a global consensus that our cooperation together is what is necessary to thrive as a society. If we don't see if we can eliminate, if we can de-incentivize, if you will, divisive rhetoric, and things that keep us from engaging in a very cooperative, um, uh, I want to say like utopian state. There we go. Then I think that we can get there, but I don't think that it's going to be me believing it. I don't think it's just going to rely on you believing it or even the people that are joining this meeting. It is going to have to be like a global acceptance and everyone showing up and saying, this is this is what we have to do. And here's what's great. The pandemic did a few things. The pandemic, as you know, whether it's like promise and peril. Though we lost a lot of human life, and there are still, it threw off what we knew was normal. What it did show us is that when everybody believes in something, and everyone, we all believed that by wearing a mask we could protect ourselves. We put it on. We didn't go outside without it. You see what I mean? If we adopt that, if we can adopt that same herd thinking, if you will, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm very confident that we can see a world and space where, regardless, where our, again, differences will make us richer together, and that people will begin to vacate that very age way of thinking of seeing others as less than, and not maybe worth engaging or entertaining, and maybe not see certain communities as safety risk, or whatever those things are that prevent them from engaging and interacting or staying far away from it. I think that we will see the type of change that people before us, fought for. I think that we've really come too far as a civilization, to life think of things as no longer being possible. I think it's very possible. I just think that, we need some people with some heavier hands of influence to step
Mhm.
in and call for a world commitment to democratization and the equalization of persons across all walks. And I hope I answered your question pretty clearly there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are an amazing speaker. First of
Thank
all,
you.
that's really. I'm really very happy that I met you, even if it's like e-meeting, but still, I'm really very happy. So, what is your ideal model of inclusion of Black and Brown community?
My, I'll be honest. My ideal vision is of people really invest in time, energy, and resources, in efforts, to advance this group. As I mentioned earlier, my organization OHUB, our commitment is to, not only is to educating, to
Mhm.
prepare people with like in demand, job ready skills to enter this space. So if you are a hiring person, a person with a hiring capacity, a person who has access to networks of companies that could use top tier talent, step number one for you should be lowering those, not lowering your expectations, but rather opening the floodgates, to invite in persons who are just a little bit different onto those teams. I think the second thing that I'll propose again is that a deeper investment in, developing inclusive, entrepreneurial ecosystems. I think that everyone, in this environment, can attest to the benefits of being able to express
Mhm.
yourself, liberally, creatively, in the entrepreneurial space, and just the economic rewards of being able to be that person that can, make those big decisions, and, inviting and establishing, that type of education and socialization tools, and embedding those into communities who we really don't need it, could be step number two. And I would say that number three, I think, is demanding it of yourself and of people around you.
Mhm.
I think that there's so much to be said about the power in our tongues, and like if we begin to, um, if you challenge again the people in your family, the people in your business, your personal professional networks, to join you in rallying, to advance this kind of work, I think that we'll all feel confident. And what I want to say too is, like, you know I have a special interest naturally, in black and brown people, just because I like the data says that that is who's suffering the most currently. That is who is most vulnerable to these advancements. But I don't want you to forget that there are other groups that are also that we also take into consideration. That is our accessible communities. Persons who are, differently abled. This is persons who identify, outside of what people call normative, at large. That is,
Mhm.
our some of our other special interest communities that also deserve to be invited in and have special programming to, accommodate their learning and to accommodate their special the advancements socially, economically, and politically that they need in order to be seen and heard as civilians,
Mhm.
as impact players, if you will, in this fourth industrial, revolution. And that's just me riffing a bit, honestly. I mean, this is something I'd actually love to. If unlimited reality is open to it, you see my whiteboard back here. Like I said, I'm a UX. Like, I think that this deserves some deeper whiteboard. Like, I challenge anyone, if you have ideas about what your, any type of great new technologies or advancements that you're using right now, like that could help level this playing field. If there's any opportunities, special training boot camps that you're currently a part of, and that you think could help, move this sooner than later, let's go for it. Like,
Mhm.
all of us are a part of the singularity community. We understand, like, like Peter Diamandis, founder, told us, be bold, be disruptive. Let's go for it. So I think that we should look at this as a no holds barred opportunity to change the world as we see it. If we're waiting on another Dr. Martin Luther King, another Mahatma Gandhi, it's not happening. It's up to us. And so, that's my challenge to everyone. And again, I think that this is such a, it is such a bold, ambitious effort. It is a heavy ask when you ask anyone to give up, to break from habit, to break from something that has been, imprinted on our minds as being normal. It is a big challenge, but it's possible. Again, I'm an Instagrammer. I see people every day losing 600 pounds by breaking habits. I see people giving up smoking cigarettes, every day from breaking habits. We can do it. We can give up this discriminative thinking by breaking old habits. And I think that this is what our um, this is our challenge. This is our big fight for this during this revolution.
Um, are there any points of vulnerability in the black and brown community, in your opinion?
Uh, points of, could you expound on that a bit? You said points of vulnerability.
Yep.
Huh?
If yes, if people feel vulnerable, and I mean vulnerable, not just because they have some skin color, but because they are judged by other people, and it's and they are judged wrongly, because people, first of all, they shouldn't judge anyone, and it's even written in Holy Bible. And we can't just judge people because they are like brown, white, red, violet, and in green polka dot. I don't know.
No, I think that, yeah, I mean, the list goes on when you say, like, do black people feel vulnerable? I mean, black vulnerability is what is expressed, with the entire Black Lives Matter movement. That is black. That is the proverbial cry for help from the black community, saying, we're tired of being murdered. We're tired of being left out. We're tired of being treated as less than. And so it's a global organization in US, UK, and Canada whose entire mission is about um, eliminating this white supremacist thinking to build up local power, build up local influencers, who can intervene, prevent, and just stop altogether, things that stand in the way of black Americans and black persons in the entire African diaspora
Mhm.
from enjoying life. Really simply and plain, like, I mean, there are so much vulnerability. I mean, as a black man, when I get into my car, I have to check all my mirrors, I have to check behind me. I mean, I would be lying if I told you that that the news doesn't trigger me whenever I see police cars, because I've watched footage of people who should be protecting me, take the lives of other people who look like me for no other reason than them looking like
Mhm.
me. And so, when I do think about, like you said, like, vulnerability, I mean, it's across all areas of our lives, and in education, where we're often left out, or where we or our schools are poorly resourced. You talk about the workforce. I mean, there is again, there was a CAPER report. I'm trying to think of the exact numbers, but like like there was speaking about, like the back to the investment piece, about how investors are more likely to invest in startups led by. So if we, naturally, if we aren't showing up in large numbers, if we don't at scale have the economic power and bandwidth to invest in people who look like
Mhm.
us, and they're investing in people who look like them, what does that mean? There's a lot of imbalance in this scale, and again, we are left out of this new world. We're left out of, when it comes to professional advancement. You know, there is I've had a number of conversations, and I've actually dealt with some of this myself, where I have experienced bias, where I have experienced feeling as though um, my my presence in the room just was not wanted. And here's the thing, we're intuitive, beings. Like, you can walk into a room and know when you're welcome. The looks on people's faces. There is something about the energy that we emit in this human experience is very telling. And so I can tell when I walk into some rooms and I've been the only black person there, that there was some discomfort. And those are the things that live within us. Those are the things we often have had to we've had to muzzle these feelings. There's a lot of archetypes out there, or I'll say stereotypical personas, like, like the angry black woman, or the violent berating black man. Things that we have to keep in the back of our mind, so because we, as professionals especially, don't want anyone to misperceive or put us in those buckets. And so that's the type of That's up for weight. That's the kind of plight that we that's the kind of plight that we live with every single day across all areas of our lives. And you look at, I mean, you look at the data. Like I think it was I don't know the exact the exact report this time, but I know that I remember when I was first getting into the social entrepreneurial space, and I learned that decisions about how many prisons were made based off of data from third grade classrooms in impoverished school systems shook me to the core. And so you just, I mean, the list can go on and on. And I mean, unless you've experienced it, which I wouldn't wish on anyone, it is very difficult, I think, um, for non-black, for non-brown people to really understand, I guess, the stench that's associated with discriminatory practices, the irresponsible, inflammatory, and how those irresponsible, inflammatory actions impact us. Because again, we are human beings. I would say, like, human to human, like we are
Yes,
some different
exactly.
species that can just, take and deal and just keep going on. I mean, fortunately, I think that the unbreakable spirit of our ancestors, that still bleeds through many of us, but it does get difficult. It's not easy. And I think that that's why I'm challenging, the broader global communities to do your part, to see yourselves in black and brown people, to understand that your privilege and your power can change everything. By you phoning a friend, by you making sure that that you use the power of externality, or I think it's of network externality, to create that domino effect where you say, this is something I believe in, now make a friend believe it, now make another friend, I'll make 100 more friends know that this is work that is valuable and worth investing in. That is how we can see, that's how we can create a new reality. That's how we can make those archaic old books, those all those stories become things that are truly from the past. Because when I look on the internet and it's still, and I feel like I've had to ask myself one time, like, is this 2021 or 1921? Like, what's really going on? With all the racist conversations. I was like, I thought we were past that. I watched all those civil rights videos in elementary school. I thought we were past that. And so, I think we just owe it to ourselves, as thinking, as creative as this intelligent being species that are occupying this planet, to do our work to really fit that crown that that's that's above us. And so this is obviously an area I'm really passionate about. I can go on and on, so I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really enjoyed this this conversation. Really, I appreciate your time so much. Um, all your passion. Really, you are an amazing human
Thank you.
being. Thank you so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, we need to end our session. Uh, so the session is recorded, so attendees can watch it once again. Thank you a lot. Attendees, I invite you to do some networking in the lounge and see you soon in other sessions. Thank you very much once again,
Thank
Karen.
you for having me.
Thank you. Goodbye.